These are the most interesting vintage photos and unusual objects from the past. Let's get 1,000 subscribers. An Allied soldier shares a meal with two Dutch children, 1945. The picture was taken after the liberation of the Netherlands, when the local population suffered from severe hunger in the last months of the war. Field artillery and soldiers crossing the Potomac River in Virginia, July 1863. A raft assembled from pontoon boats covered with tarpaulins and planks was used for transportation. Bridge workers lay out paving stones on Compton Avenue north of Merrimack Street, 1906. In the distance to the left, you can see the characteristic towers of the Church of St. Anthony of Padua. Roger Fenton's photographic van during the Crimean War, 1855. The image was taken using the salt print method and captured the photographer's assistant next to a mobile dark room. Such wagons made it possible to process images right on the spot, which made Fenton one of the first military photojournalists. One of the first electric refrigerators of the early 20th century is on display at the exhibition. Such devices operated on a compression cooling system and gradually replaced glaciers in homes. An advertisement from the beginning of the 20th century demonstrates the Holloway Restful Reading Stand. The device fixed books in a comfortable position, allowing you to read lying down or sitting without straining your hands. A Turkish resident built a house in the hollow of an old tree among the ruins of the city of Alioshir, 1923. After the devastation of the Greco-Turkish War, many people used improvised materials and unusual places for temporary residence. NASA employees celebrate the successful launch of the Apollo 11 spacecraft, July 16, 1969. This mission was the first in history when humans landed on the surface of the moon. A Toyota Corolla advertising poster from the late 1970s. The announcement highlights reliability, cost-effectiveness, and a variety of models, including the Corolla SR5 liftback and Sport Coupe. Vintage Coca-Cola magazine advertisement, 1960. In the image, ballerinas in costumes relax with a bottle of carbonated drink, emphasizing its refreshing effect. Volunteer Fire Brigade in Istanbul, 1870s. The picture shows men in traditional Ottoman clothes with a hand pump and fire hoses. Such formations were created to combat the frequent urban fires that threatened wooden buildings. A metal ticket dispenser used in theaters and cinemas in the first half of the 20th century. It made it possible to store and quickly issue tickets of different denominations through separate slots. The first cable car through the Niagara Gorge opened in 1916. The device was called the Spanish Aero Car and allowed passengers to be transported over the swift current of the river. The cabin could accommodate up to 40 people and quickly became one of the main attractions of the region. A scientific project called The Effect of LSD on Fish, presented by a 10th grader from California in 1972. The work included a demonstration of aquariums and photographs, describing deformations and experimental individuals. The crew of a Crusader tank cleans a 6-pounder cannon in El Arous, Tunisia, May 1943. The picture shows Sergeant Elms, Private Bates, Signalman Bauer, and Private Goddard preparing the car for the upcoming offensive. Nurses take care of recovering military personnel in the garden of the Royal Air Force Hospital, named after Princess Mary, in Holton, Buckinghamshire, August 1943. Soldiers, many of whom are in wheelchairs or on crutches, spend time outdoors surrounded by staff. Assembly of Avro Lancaster heavy bombers at the Avro plant in Woodford, Cheshire, 1943. The picture shows workshops where workers are completing the installation of engines and the final preparation of aircraft. The Wachette manual washing machine of the middle of the 20th century. Inside there was a washing drum, and on top there was a mechanical roller for pressing laundry, driven by a handle. One of the early radio installations of the late 19th, early 20th century, based on a spark transmitter. Similar devices were used for the first experiments of wireless telegraphy. The poster of the U.S. Department of War dated April 20th, 1865, with the announcement of the reward for the capture of the murderer of Abraham Lincoln and his accomplices. $100,000 was offered for John Wilkes Booth and for John H. Surratt and David E. The ceremony of scoring the Golden Crutch at the summit, 1869. The event marked the connection of the Central Pacific and Union Pacific Railways, completing the construction of the first transcontinental line in the United States. Composite portraits of criminals created by Francis Galton in 1877 in London. The scientists superimpose photographs of different convicts on top of each other to identify the common features of people prone to crime. The photograph, The Organist and the Singing Girl, taken by Eugene Atget in Paris in 1898. The picture captured a street musician with a hurdy-gurdy and a young singer accompanying his performance. The first flight of the Wright Flyer, December 17, 1903, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. The flight lasted only 12 seconds and covered a distance of 36 meters. Photograph by Alfred Stieglitz, The Third Class, 1907. The picture was taken aboard the steamer SS Kaiser Wilhelm II and captured immigrants traveling in the lower cabins. Pocket stereoscope, Kiss Me, produced by American Chicle Co. at the beginning of the 20th century. The device allowed viewing three-dimensional images using two lenses. Grand Prix of the Automobile Club of France in Dieppe, 1912. The picture shows racing driver René Crockett with a mechanic in his car, Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow, a famous pair of gangsters during the Great Depression in the USA. The photo was taken in the early 1930s and has become one of the most famous in their archive. A crowd surrounds Charles Lindbergh's plane at Croydon Airfield in London, May 29, 1927. Lindbergh became the first person to make a single non-stop flight across the Atlantic. A rare mechanical business card holder from the late 19th, early 20th century. The device made it possible to store and quickly flip through business cards using a rotating mechanism. The Bricklayer, 1928, Cologne, Germany, depicting a worker with bricks on his shoulders as a symbol of the working class. Photo of Eric Salomon, taken in The Hague on January 3, 1930. The picture shows diplomats in an informal setting during international negotiations. Salomon became famous as a master of the reporter's hidden camera, capturing politicians at moments outside the official protocol. Polio patients in the Iron Lung Hospital in Downey, California, 1950. These devices provided artificial ventilation for patients with respiratory muscle paralysis. Photo Leap to Freedom, taken by Peter Liebing on August 15, 1961 in Berlin. In the picture, East German soldier Hans Conrad Schumann jumps over the barbed wire, crossing to the west side. A meeting of the UN Security Council on October 25, 1962, during the Cuban Missile Crisis. American Representative Adlai Stevenson III demonstrates aerial photographs of Soviet rocket launchers in Cuba, arguing with Soviet Ambassador Valerian Zorin. In 1967, during the Boston Marathon. In the picture, Judge Jock Semple is trying to forcibly stop runner Catherine Switzer, the first official female participant in the history of the marathon. The bootprint of the Apollo 11 astronaut, made by Buzz Aldrin in the Sea of Tranquility on the Moon on July 21, 1969. Evacuation of U.S. employees and citizens from the embassy in Saigon, April 1975. The photo captured the moment of the mass landing of people on a helicopter during the fall of South Vietnam. The field house of the 8th Hussar Regiment, April 1855, Crimea. The picture was taken using the salt print method and captured British soldiers during the Crimean War. Engineer Isambard Kingdom Brunel, captured in November 1857 against the backdrop of giant steamship chains. The photograph has become an iconic image of the Victorian era, symbolizing the achievements of the Industrial Revolution. The Jumelle de Nicourt, created in 1866, is one of the first small-format portable cameras modeled after binoculars. A cartoon from Punch magazine, 1855, mocks the difficulties of daguerreotype, Prolonged exposure made movement impossible, which often blurred faces, and color rendering features turned blush into dark spots. These limitations became the subject of ridicule, but also emphasized the need for technological progress in photography. The 1893 photo, made by the method of multi-exposition, depicts a photographer taking pictures of himself. The picture ironically shows outdated studio equipment. The picture, Homecoming, which captured the touching meeting of soldiers returning from the war with their families. In 1950, an aircraft collision occurred in the air at an air show, which led to their destruction and the loss of pilots. In 1951, during a match between Drake and Oklahoma, player Johnny Bright suffered a serious injury, a broken jaw after being hit by an opponent. A photograph taken during the 1952 presidential campaign captured former Illinois Governor Adlai E. Stevenson with a noticeable hole in the sole of his shoe, which became a symbol of his simplicity and closeness to voters. A photo captured the dramatic rescue in Redding, California, when a truck hung over a bridge after an accident. The picture was published in the Akron Beacon Journal and other publications, and then distributed nationwide by the Associated Press. The Tragedy by the Sea photograph captures a young couple standing on the shore next to a stormy ocean, where their little son had died a few minutes earlier. This frame became a symbol of human sorrow and was recognized as one of the most emotional photos of its time. The photo captures the aftermath of a plane crash in a residential area of the United States in 1955. The plane crashed directly into the houses, causing a large fire and a thick column of smoke visible for many kilometers. The photo of the sunken liner Andrea Doria was taken in 1957, just a few minutes before its final disappearance underwater. A picture from an airplane at an altitude of 75 feet captured the overturned hull of the vessel and the lifeboats nearby. The photo, Faith and Confidence, taken in 1958, shows the moment when a police officer in New York bends over a 2-year-old boy and explains to him how to cross the street properly during a parade. On August 28, 1955, a serious accident occurred on the Folkmel Highway in Assentoft, Denmark, during a motorcycle competition. The motorcyclist lost control and fell, leaving the car a few meters away. A German prisoner of war from World War II, released by the Soviet Union, reunites with his 12-year-old daughter in West Germany. He hadn't seen her since she was a baby, and the photo captured the moment of the family's first meeting after many years of separation. During the match between Sparta Prague and Červenoi Zvezda Bratislava, Sparta goalkeeper Miroslav Čvrtniček remains on the field in the pouring rain. During the military rebellion of El Porteñazo, a dying soldier clings to a priest, seeking solace in the last moments of his life. The scene unfolds under sniper fire, enhancing the drama of what is happening. A Turkish woman mourns her husband, who died during the Greek-Turkish conflict. Her family and neighbors gathered around her, trying to comfort her grief, but despair and tears overwhelm the entire scene. A Catholic man wearing a gas mask stands at a wall with the inscription, "We want peace," in Northern Ireland, moments before British troops fired tear gas during riots. After a bank robbery in Saarbrücken, Germany in 1972, the robbers engaged in a shootout with the police. The picture shows the chaos on the road, running people, fallen police officers, and the arriving helicopter of the special services. On February 23, 1981, Lieutenant Colonel Antonio Tejero stormed into the Spanish Parliament with armed guards. He interrupted the meeting, pointing a pistol at the deputies and announcing the seizure of the building. Ken Mix, an American with AIDS, sits in a wheelchair. His hands show skin lesions caused by Kaposi's sarcoma, a characteristic of the disease. In 1987, a mother from Kuro, South Korea, desperately leaned against a policeman's shield, begging for the release of her son, who was detained at a demonstration. The protests broke out after the November elections, which the population considered rigged. U.S. Army Sergeant Ken Kozakiewicz cries in a helicopter after learning about the death of his comrade Andy Alanis, who died from the fire of his own troops. The picture was taken during the Persian Gulf War, 1991. President John F. Kennedy accepts a traditional Thanksgiving turkey from the National Turkey Federation. This ceremony at the White House in 1963 became part of an annual tradition that has survived to this day. This is a rare cigar vending machine from the early 20th century, when such devices were installed in bars and clubs. For 5 cents, the buyer received premium NY Special cigars, which were considered a sign of status. American and Soviet tanks converge at Checkpoint Charlie in Berlin during the 1961 crisis. The confrontation has become a symbol of the Cold War and tension between the two superpowers. General Frank W. McKinless takes the oath of office from the first group of women to join the United States Marine Corps in New York in 1943. This step paved the way for more active participation of women in the armed forces during the Second World War. The editorial office of the newspaper, The New York Times. In 1942, journalists work at typewriters, preparing materials in wartime conditions, when the demand for operational news was particularly high. The German 7th Panzer Division is preparing for an offensive on the territory of the USSR, 1941. The Panzerwürfer medium tank, used by the Wehrmacht in the early years of World War II, is visible in the background. Mahatma Gandhi's letter to Adolf Hitler, July 1939. In this address, Gandhi calls for renouncing war so as not to plunge humanity into barbarism. Here is Digital Derby Auto Raceway, a cult electronic toy from the late 1970s from the Tomy Company. The player controlled a small steering wheel and switched gears, dodging cars on a moving film. Crowds filled Wall Street on Armistice Day, November 11, 1918. New Yorkers celebrated the end of World War I and the signing of the Cessation of Hostilities Agreement. The Mona Lisa was temporarily exhibited at the Uffizi Gallery in Florence in 1913. The painting was found 2 years after the theft from the Louvre and was temporarily on display in Italy. Spouses in Korea, 1904. A man and a woman are depicted in traditional casual clothes, a woman's hanbok and a man's formal suit. In 1985, Ebony magazine published What They May Look Like in the Year 2000, in which artists tried to predict what stars would look like in the future. This portrait depicts the alleged appearance of Michael Jackson on his 40th birthday. This is the panel of an old Zenith solid-state TV, popular in the USA in the 1960s and 1970s. Large rotary knobs were used to switch channels and adjust the frequency, and the side controls were responsible for the volume, contrast, and brightness of the image. The crew of the American self-propelled Gun M10 Wolverine uses the body of the car as a shelter. The picture shows the frontline life of soldiers during the Second World War. A Korean mother hugs her son, who recently escaped from a North Korean prison camp. The picture was taken shortly after the signing of the Korean Armistice in 1953, which put an end to large-scale hostilities. Students in the dormitory of a Canadian boarding school say a prayer before going to bed. Such institutions existed from the end of the 19th century to the second half of the 20th century and were under the control of the state and the church. The system was officially shut down by the 1970s. In 1931, 17-year-old Jackie Mitchell became the only woman to score a strikeout against baseball legends Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. This episode went down in the history of American sports as a rare case of a woman participating in a professional league. This is a staged shot from the beginning of the 20th century. A trained chimpanzee named Little Nap was dressed in a Napoleon costume and became a circus attraction and advertising image around 1915. The British Mark IV tank overcomes a wide moat during exercises, 1917. These vehicles became the first mass-produced tanks of the First World War, designed to break through fortified positions. German soldiers in a trench on the Eastern Front during World War II. Despite the difficult conditions, mud and knee-deep water, one of the fighters smiles with a pipe in his mouth, holding a bowler hat. German Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, nicknamed the Fox of the Desert, talks with his officers in North Africa, early 1940s. His tactical decisions brought the Afrika Korps a series of impressive victories. President John F. Kennedy with Jacqueline at the inauguration ball, January 1961. That evening, he delivered his famous speech about passing the torch to a new generation of Americans, which has become a symbol of the country's renewal. Before apps and push alerts, you'd fish the paper out of the recycling bin and scan the listings box with a finger. Matinees, evening shows, ratings, all crammed into tiny columns. You'd circle a time, call a friend, and hope there were still seats when you got there. Simpler, slower, and somehow more exciting. In the heat of the Battle of the Bogside, 1969, young dairy boxer Mickey Dehan squared up bare-fisted against the RUC. Eyewitnesses recall him dropping 3 officers in the chaos before disappearing back into the crowd. In 1957, Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip were photographed on a boat in New York Harbor with the Statue of Liberty in the distance. The visit symbolized a post-war strengthening of ties between Britain and the United States. This device is called the Brannock device, invented in 1927 to accurately measure the foot when selecting shoes. It allows you to determine the length, width, and arch of the foot, which has made it the standard in shoe stores for decades. In 1943, at the age of 17, the future movie star Marilyn Monroe still bore her real name, Norma Jean Baker. In this photo taken on the beach, she appeared in a simple summer outfit, long before she became a Hollywood icon and one of the most recognizable women of the 20th century. In 1958, Elvis Presley was drafted into the U.S. Army and served at Fort Chaffee, Arkansas. The picture shows him in a canteen with other soldiers, without the stage image and the brilliance of show business. This photo highlights his role as an ordinary conscript during his service, when he temporarily abandoned his career as a musician. In the photo, Mercedes-Benz cars are lined up on a field, forming the inscription, "Hail Hitler," and the company's corporate logo. This picture was taken in the 1930s as a demonstration of the concern's loyalty to the Nazi regime. During the Third Reich, Daimler-Benz actively cooperated with the authorities, producing equipment for the army and using forced labor. The photo shows Jack Johnson, the first African-American world heavyweight boxing champion, with his wife Etta Terry Durieux. Despite racial segregation and the harsh laws of Jim Crow, he managed to break through to the top of the sport and became a symbol of the struggle against bias. Their luxurious clothes highlight Johnson's status and success at the beginning of the 20th century. The picture shows a Westinghouse double-decker bus manufactured at the Marta factory in Arad, Austria-Hungary, now Romania. It could accommodate 34 passengers, 16 seats downstairs, and 18 upstairs. The first flight of such a bus took place on June 28, 1908, becoming an important step in the development of public transport in the region. Promotional photo of Indian motorcycle and tricars, circa 1906. The picture shows a rare 3-wheeled model with a passenger seat in front, designed for comfortable trips. Such machines combine the functions of a motorcycle and an early automobile, drawing attention to both innovation and the brand's prestige. Caterpillar tracked tractor with a capacity of 35 HP crosses a stream on its own bridge, 1908. This machine was one of the first examples of heavy tracked vehicles, demonstrating its capabilities for agriculture and construction. The legendary ship Endurance of the Ernest Shackleton expedition in the Antarctic ice, 1915. The ship turned out to be tightly trapped by pack ice during the Imperial Transantarctic expedition. It was subsequently crushed by ice and sank, and the crew survived one of the most dramatic rescues in the history of polar exploration. A package of Sertron LN60 tape cassettes, designed for 60 minutes of recording, 30 minutes per side. Such cassettes were widely used in the 1970s and 1980s to record music and speech. A German soldier in a trench in 1917. He is wearing a steel helmet and additional frontal armor designed to protect his head and face. In his hands, he holds a rifle with a sawtooth bayonet, which was used not only in combat, but also as a tool for cutting wood. An advertisement for the Columbia Record and Tape Club in the late 1970s offered 13 records or cassettes for as little as $1 upon joining the club. After that, the subscriber committed to buy a certain number of recordings at full price over the next years. The photo shows classic four-wheeled roller skates neatly arranged on rental shelves. Such skates were widely used in roller arenas and skating rinks in the second half of the 20th century. American medics from the 5th and 6th Special Engineering Brigades help a wounded soldier on the coast of Normandy in June 1944. These units played a key role in the Allied landings, providing assistance and evacuating casualties right on the front line. Chief Little Coyote and Chief Tuxedo, leaders of the Northern Cheyenne, 1873. They played a key role in resisting resettlement and protecting their people's lands during the period of increased U.S. expansion. These stone masks, which are about 9,000 years old, are considered the oldest in the world. They were found in the Judean desert near Jerusalem and are associated with the transition of people from hunting and gathering to agriculture. This is a TV game computer switch used in the 1970s and 1980s to connect game consoles and home computers to a TV. The signal from the console went through this block and switched between the antenna and the game. In May 1944, employees of the Women's Auxiliary Air Force were engaged in repairing and stowing parachutes at the glider station of the Royal Air Force in Great Britain. These parachutes were intended for the British airborne troops who were to participate in the Normandy landings. In December 1942, an observer of the Auxiliary Territorial Service conducted visual sky monitoring using binoculars at the position of a 3.7-inch anti-aircraft cannon. Female anti-aircraft gunners played a key role in the UK's air defense system, detecting incoming enemy aircraft in a timely manner. In September 1943, British gunners from the 75th Medium Regiment of the Royal Artillery fired on enemy positions in Italy. To protect them from aerial reconnaissance, their 5.5-inch howitzer was hidden under a camouflage net. In July 1944, at the Baysenville Airfield in Normandy, Squadron Commander James "Johnny" Johnson poses next to his Spitfire fighter and a Labrador named Sally. A female worker at a factory in Nashville, Tennessee, drills the skin of a bomber, 1943. The picture was taken by a photographer who captured the contribution of women to the U.S. defense industry during the war. A sergeant in the U.S. Women's Army Corps talks to a local sailor who shows her a model sailing ship. The picture was taken in England in 1944. American soldiers in the port of Le Havre, France, receive coffee and donuts at the field kitchen. The picture was taken in July 1945 before their return to the United States and subsequent deployment to the Pacific Front. This is a Gerald-wired television remote control used in the 1970s and 1980s. The channels were switched using mechanical buttons, each of which corresponded to a channel number. The device was connected to the TV with a cable and offered up to 36 channels. Sergeant George Sushow of the U.S. Army conducts radio communications while hiding near the line, Germany, October 1944. He uses an EE-8 field phone while staying in position after an artillery barrage. An M4 Sherman medium tank slides off an amphibious assault ship during an amphibious training exercise, 1944. Such trainings worked out the coherence of the actions of the crews and sailors before operations in Europe and the Pacific. American soldiers have fun playing darts near camouflage tents in England, June 1944. Such moments of relaxation help to relieve tension while waiting for the Normandy landings. American soldiers in winter camouflage are training at a mortar position near Savfk, Belgium, on January 24, 1945. The fighters set up a shelter right in the snow, providing camouflage and protection. Soldiers of the Royal Irish Rifles Regiment are in the communications trench during the Battle of the Somme, 1916. These trenches served as communication routes between the front and the rear, ensuring the delivery of orders, ammunition, and food. British and German soldiers met in no man's land during the Christmas truce, December 1914. This unofficial ceasefire allowed the opponents to exchange gifts, talk, and even play football. A British soldier opens the Princess Mary Gift Fund Christmas gift box, December 1914. These cans of tobacco, sweets, and a postcard from Princess Mary were given to the military as a sign of support and gratitude. British soldiers celebrate Christmas in the trenches at the front, 1916. On a makeshift table among the ruins, they share rations and festive treats, trying to maintain the spirit of camaraderie. The Winter War, 1939-1940, was fought between the Soviet Union and Finland. The USSR sought to move the border away from Leningrad and obtain territorial concessions, while the Finnish army stubbornly defended its independence. A French soldier wearing a gas mask, used since 1916 to protect against toxic substances. The massive use of chemical weapons on the Western Front has forced armies to introduce such personal protective equipment. The photo shows a British military chaplain saying a prayer over a German military medic during the First World War. The picture reflects a rare moment of humanity and compassion against the backdrop of fierce fighting. A photographer captured the moment of the pilot's emergency landing and escape from the deck of an aircraft carrier from an F-6F Hellcat aircraft in 1943. It can be seen how the pilot manages to leave the car while fire breaks out around. The photo shows tests of early body armor conducted by the U.S. Department of Defense around 1918. Metal breastplates with visible bullet marks were shown on the fighters. These experiments were one of the first steps towards the creation of modern individual body armor. A photograph taken in destroyed Warsaw in 1946 shows a street photographer with a backdrop of ruins. To give people the illusion of beauty and tranquility, he uses a painted landscape with a lake and a house. A color photograph captures a street of workers' houses in the Netherlands, circa 1930. The picture shows simple brick buildings and residents reflecting the way of life of low-income families. The color photograph depicts the American Arctic explorer Robert Peary, circa 1908. He is wearing a massive fur suit designed to protect against extremely low temperatures. Color photography, 1918. A carrier pigeon is released from the loophole of a British tank to transmit a message. Pigeon mail was actively used during the First World War as a reliable way of communication on the battlefield. Color photography, 1960. Robert F. Kennedy during a stop at a movie theater where he eats directly from the car. Such establishments were a popular element of American culture in the mid-20th century. September 18, 1944. A resident of the village of Aalst, the Netherlands, hands a cigar to a British soldier of the Guards Armored Division, who is in an armored personnel carrier during Operation Kitchen Garden. September 6, 1941. Finnish soldiers escort a captured Red Army soldier through the village of Kirjasalo during the Soviet-Finnish War during World War II. According to sources, the prisoner of war informed the Finns about the location of the Red Army units in the nearby forest. The year is 1939. The crew of a Dutch submarine is preparing a 40mm anti-aircraft gun, Vickers, for test firing. The picture shows the preparation of the submarine for possible actions in the pre-war period. June 4, 1942. Medics and sailors of the aircraft carrier provide assistance to the wounded after an airstrike during the Battle of Midway. The battle was a turning point in the war, where the United States won a strategic victory over the Japanese fleet. The missing link puzzle was released in 1981 as an alternative to the Rubik's Cube. The task was to rotate the segments so that a continuous chain was formed on each side. The toy quickly became a popular logic test of its time. German soldiers crossed the Soviet border on the morning of June 22, 1941 during Operation Barbarossa. In the foreground, the USSR border post with a coat of arms is visible, and next to it is a column with a 7.5mm light infantry cannon 18. Smoke rises on the horizon from set-on-fire objects, which became a symbol of the beginning of the large-scale invasion of Nazi Germany into the Soviet Union. The photo shows Hermann Göring one of the main Nazi leaders at the Nuremberg trials in 1946. This international court was held from November 1945 to October 1946 and considered the war crimes of the leaders of the Third Reich. The photo shows the negotiations on the 1905 Portsmouth Peace Treaty, which ended the Russian-Japanese War. Japan's victory was the first time in history that an Asian power defeated a European one, which shocked the whole world and consolidated it as a new military force. For Russia, the defeat was a national humiliation, provoking the Revolution of 1905. Washington, D.C., 1935. The street is crowded with people, cars, and trams, reflecting the dynamics of life in the period between the Great Depression and the coming industrialization. Fulton Fish Market in New York, 1936. Workers unload crates of fish against the backdrop of Manhattan skyscrapers, symbolizing the contrast between hard manual labor and the rapid growth of the metropolis. New York, 1937. The intersection of Fifth Avenue and 42nd Street, filled with crowds of pedestrians and streetcars. San Angelo, Texas, 1940. The cattle show parade attracted hundreds of spectators. Cavalrymen with flags are walking along the street, accompanied by police on motorcycles. Washington, D.C., 1942. Sergeant George Cambler with his girlfriend at the entrance to the cinema. The posters advertise films starring Charles Boyer and Hedy Lamarr, and war bonds are sold nearby. Boston, January 1919. Destruction after the explosion of the Purity distilling tank, which caused the Great Treacle Flood. A wave of thick molasses up to 4.5 meters high flooded the streets of the North End, destroying buildings and vehicles. 21 people were killed in the crash, and more than 150 were injured. Indianapolis, Indiana, August 1908. Messenger boys with bicycles in the square. Similar work was common among teenagers, providing fast deliveries around the city. Photographer Lewis Hine shot this scene as part of his series on child labor. West Virginia, October 1908. Young coal carters with horses in a mine. Teenagers worked side by side with adults in difficult conditions, carrying trolleys. Paris, February 1888. Construction of the Eiffel Tower. The photo shows the lower sections of the structure, assembled on massive wooden scaffolding. The work took about 2 years, and by March 1889, the tower was completed. Rio de Janeiro, circa 1930. The erection of the statue of Christ the Redeemer on Mount Corcovado. Metal scaffolding surrounds the central part of the structure, where the torso was formed. The monument was completed and inaugurated in 1931. Barcelona, 1905. Construction of the Sagrada Familia Church, designed by Antonio Gaudí. The photo shows partially erected facades and towers surrounded by scaffolding. Work on the cathedral has been going on for more than a century to this day. Hans Langseth, 1846-1927, a Norwegian immigrant to the United States, had the longest beard in the world. Its length reached 533 meters. In a photograph dating from about 1912, he poses with part of his famous beard neatly arranged in his lap. Langseth's record is still considered unsurpassed.